Today, I want to talk about the Imago Dei. That is the Latin phrase for the image of God. Genesis 1:27 says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." Like everything else in the Bible, this verse is a source of a healthy amount of debate. And unlike other places, the debate in this verse is actually really good. And the reason is because it helps various Christians and various Christian groups to get together and to hash out the significance of what it means to be made in the image of God. So, what exactly does that mean, this Imago Dei? Does it mean that we, like God, have creativity, imagination, intelligence, memory, emotion, desire, passion, an interest in the future, a sense of the eternal, a desire to live, independence, and a longing for connection? Yes, it does. But it means a bit more than that. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned while going through Genesis 1 that Moses chose an interesting word when he said that we were made in God's image. You see, Moses, as it turns out, didn't speak English. In fact, he didn't write in English, not even in the King James. He wrote in Hebrew, and Hebrew is a fairly compact language. That means that there are not a whole lot of words in Hebrew. In the Old Testament, there are only about 8,700 different words, and that includes names, and there are a lot of those. Compare this with your average American vocabulary of 42,000 words, not quite 5 times as many words as are used in total in the Old Testament. Many words that we differentiate in English are combined in Hebrew. And this isn't because the Hebrews thought, let's combine these ideas. It's because the Hebrews recognized that certain ideas were innately similar to each other. For example, the word etzeb refers to pain, toil, labor, and sorrow. And you can see how these ideas they're all rather similar to each other. In fact, our word pain covers all of these ideas as well if you use it carefully. We just have lots of extra words on top of that to get the shades of meaning and specifics if we would like to. Hebrew, not so much. But this also gives Hebrew some advantages as well. In many ways, ideas can be folded together intentionally. Instead, you use context to break them apart. For example, Genesis 3:15 says, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will bruise his heel." In this verse, the word shuf, which I'm going to tell you is a great word to say, means to bruise in one case and to crush in the other. How we know which is by context. The action done by the inferior agent, that is, by the snake, is uh, is to provide a damaging force against the superior agent's heel. That is, ultimately, Christ. That is to bruise. But the action done by the superior agent, that's Christ, is to provide a damaging force against the inferior agent, the snake's head. That is, to crush. And so it's the context that solves the problem for you. Of course, Moses was fully aware that he was using the same word in both cases. And this creates a beautiful and poetic parallel in the original language. He wouldn't have seen using the same words in both cases being restricting or some sort of problem. Rather, he would have appreciated the beautiful turn of phrase. To Moses and the original audience in this text, there was no difficulty at all in understanding what he was doing. They weren't thinking, golly, those are two different ideas that should must be expressed by using two different words. That's a very us idea. Rather, they understood the similarity of the phrases with a single word that we consider to be two different distinct ideas. How does this relate to Imago Dei? Genesis 1:27. Again, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. For the word image, Moses uses the word telem. This word's used 17 times in the Old Testament and refers to anything that is made to create a figure, such as a statue or a casting. that resembles the original idol. Uses for this term include Numbers 33:52, in which the Hebrews are ordered to destroy all of the engraved stones, that word is maskith, and all of the molded images, selem, of the Canaanites that they were displacing. It's also used in 2 Kings 11:18, where the people under Jehoiada went to the temple of Baal and destroyed it. Baal's altars and Baal's images, selem. Most of the time, though, when Moses or another writer is referencing an idol, they use the term galul. This term is particularly derogatory, as it's actually literally calling the idol a log. That is nothing but a log. There's another similar Hebrew term I should mention as well, which is gamuth. This refers to something that's similar to something else, or it's shaped like it or resembling it. This word is used along with tselem in Genesis 1:26, where God said, "Let us make mankind in our image," tselem, in our likeness, muth. Another example is 2 Chronicles 4:3, where the giant bowl at the temple was held up by 12 bronze cast statues made in the likeness, the muth, of bulls. Most of the instances of this word, though, refer to something that is generally similar to something else and not really like it. Now, let's discuss Moses' word choice. Had Moses wanted to say that humans were made to be somewhat similar to God, he would have used the word demuth as his strongest word. That is, we're created with certain aspects that demonstrate a distinct correlation to our Creator. In fact, in Genesis 1:26, he does use demuth as a supporting word in his description of how humans were made. Had Moses intended to say that humans were a detestable representation of God, then he could have used the term galul. We obviously would not have expected him to do this, since we were made by God to be very good, by God's own reckoning. Instead, Moses uses the word selem, indicating more than a subtle correlation between the Creator and his created creatures. The word selem means that we are essentially engravings or castings of the living God. In my comments on Genesis 1, I said that God made us into idols of himself. That is the way the people would have understood the term. The Hebrews themselves would have understood that term. Not intending to add the derogatory hint that the word galul would have added. One of my listeners, someone I'm very close to, responded quickly that the word idol is repugnant and that we're not made to be repugnant. She holds the meaning of the word idol quite similar to the Hebrew word galul. I didn't mean for the word to be degrading. Rather, I intended to mean the term selem rightly connotes that fleshly humans were made to be a figure representation of the real creator God, in the same way that logs and stones were made to be figure representations of the false gods of Egypt and Canaan. The significance of this is not that humans are thus divine. That's nonsense. Nor does it mean that humans should be recipients of worship. So nonsense. Rather, this phrase, Imago Dei, the image of God, gives humans a special status in the universe that no other physical creature on earth possesses. And with that status, certain responsibilities, qualities, and value. First, status. Because we are made in the image of God, in his likeness, we're placed or ranked above the rest of physical creation, but below our Creator, as he is the actual, and we are merely replicas or figurines of the original. This status carries with it authority and rights with regards to those subordinated to us. Second, responsibilities. As creatures made in the image of God, we automatically represent God in everything we do, whether we like it or not, whether what we do is good or not. As such, everything we do will be judged by God in that context. Did we represent him well? Did we represent him poorly or wickedly? Think about what would happen if a man's servant were caught stealing from the neighbors. Not only would the servant be found guilty of a crime, but it would bring shame to his master. Because of this, the servant would be judged for damaging both the neighbor and for his master. Not only so, but we as God's images are expected to employ the qualities God has imbued in us, bringing us to three qualities. Just as idols of false gods have eyes, ears, and noses, not to mention uselessness, like the gods they represent, so also we have various qualities of our invisible God: creativity, reason, personability, love, hope, humility, justice, and many others that I mentioned earlier. These are aspects given in particular to humans. Though, as I mentioned earlier, the lower animals carry many of these traits to some degree. We are to use these qualities to glorify the God who made us. How? By using them to advance justice, mercy, and a humble attitude before our Maker. 4. Value. As images of God, we possess intrinsic and inestimable value. This value is innate to being human, not to being a particular type of human, like having nobility or wealth or popularity or race or creed or age. You don't lose this value if you're poor or senile or unborn. Rather, every human possesses the same value merely for being an image of his creator. Today, the very concept of human specialty is regularly attacked and ridiculed, where our cultural acceptance of God given value is torn down, such as in communist countries throughout the 20th century. Mass slaughter and mass slavery ensue. Which seems more logical? And which situation would produce more respect and goodwill between humans? Creator, or if we saw each other as random biological accidents with the equivalent morality, with the equivalent moral value of pigs and rats, which is going to be better? Consider abortion. The argument for abortion starts with the premise that unborn humans have the same value as a clump of cancer cells. Abortion advocates actively call the unborn parasites. The thrust of the abortion argument is to dehumanize the unborn human, much the same way as the Nazis dehumanized the Jews, or as slave owners dehumanized black people. Moses in Genesis, though, pushes exactly in the opposite direction. By equating the creation of man and woman to the statues of the gods of Egypt, he made it clear that humans have divine protection. Anyone caught defacing a statue of the god Ra would be put to death because he committed a crime against the divine, not in defacing Ra directly, but in defacing his image. Likewise, anyone caught defacing an image of the creator God would face punishment for committing a crime against the divine, not against God directly, but against his image. You and I are that image. Now live accordingly.